I overheard her on the phone with her sister, laughing about how I was just a placeholder until someone better came along. What she didn't know was that I'd just picked out her engagement ring that morning. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't shattered everything I thought I knew about the woman I loved. That conversation set off a chain of events that would expose secrets, destroy careers, and prove that underestimating someone is the biggest mistake you can make. Before we get into this story, hit that subscribe button and become part of our community. Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Now let's dive in. My name is Marcus Williams. I'm 32 years old, and up until 4 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I founded a software development company 5 years ago, starting in my apartment with nothing but a laptop and an idea. We built custom enterprise solutions for mid-sized companies, and business was good. Really good, actually. But I've never been the type to flash success around. I drive a Toyota Camry because it's practical. I live in a modest 2-bedroom condo in Fremont because it's comfortable and close to the office. I wear jeans and hoodies most days because that's what works in tech. None of that meant I wasn't successful. It just meant I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Elena Rodriguez was different. She was the kind of woman who commanded attention the moment she entered a room. Tall, polished, always dressed like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. She worked as an associate at Morrison & Pierce, one of Seattle's most prestigious law firms. Everything about Elena screamed ambition and sophistication. Designer everything, the right connections, the kind of presence that made people automatically assume she was important. We met 3 years ago at a networking event in downtown Seattle. I was there representing my company. She was there with colleagues from her firm. We started talking about the intersection of technology and law, and I was genuinely impressed by how sharp she was. When she gave me her number, I felt like I'd won the lottery. The first year and a half was amazing. Elena was attentive, supportive, always interested in my work. She'd ask about my projects, celebrate our company wins, and seemed proud to introduce me to her friends and colleagues. I fell hard for her, started imagining our future together, marriage, kids, building something real. She talked about making partner at her firm, and I talked about scaling my company. We seemed like the perfect match, both driven and ambitious in our own ways. But around the 2-year mark, something shifted. It started small, little comments here and there. "Marcus, don't you think it's time to upgrade your car? You're running a successful company now." Or, "Babe, maybe we should look at condos in Capitol Hill or Belltown. This place is fine, but it doesn't really reflect where you are in life." I'd brush it off, tell her I was happy with what I had, but the comments kept coming, and they got sharper. Her friends started joining in too. Elena had this tight circle from law school. Victoria Chen, whose family owned a real estate development empire, Sienna Park, married to a venture capitalist who drove a different luxury car every week, and Gabrielle Torres, a corporate attorney who treated every social gathering like a networking opportunity to climb higher. These women were Elena's world, and increasingly I felt like I was being evaluated against some checklist I'd never signed up for. They'd make comments at dinners, little jabs wrapped in laughter. "Still driving the Camry, Marcus? That's so charmingly retro." Or, "Elena, when are you going to take him shopping? He needs a serious wardrobe intervention." Elena would laugh along, sometimes even adding her own commentary. "He's practical to a fault. I'm working on him." I told myself she was just trying to fit in with her crowd, that the comments didn't mean anything. But deep down, something felt wrong. The woman I'd fallen in love with had seemed to genuinely appreciate my grounded nature. Now she acted embarrassed by it. The night that started unraveling everything happened on a Tuesday in late July. Elena had come over to my place after work, which was becoming less frequent. She said she needed to make some calls and went out onto the balcony. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard her voice through the sliding glass door. She must have thought I couldn't hear her, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. "Marcus is sweet and all, but honestly, Mia, I'm just biding my time." She was talking to her sister. "He's got potential, but he's so frustratingly content with mediocrity. Like he could be living in a penthouse downtown, driving something that actually turns heads, but no, he's perfectly happy in this basic condo with his boring car. It's actually kind of embarrassing when I have to introduce him to clients or partners at the firm. I can see them judging, wondering what I'm doing with someone so clearly beneath my level. I stood there frozen, knife in hand, hearing the woman I loved dissect our relationship like it was a business deal gone wrong. She laughed, that same light laugh I used to find charming. I know, but here's the thing. I'm up for partner in a few months. Once that's locked in and I've got that title and salary, I can upgrade everything, including my relationship status. Marcus is fine for now, but he's not endgame material. I need someone who matches my ambition, who gets that image matters in my world.
Her sister must have said something because Elena's tone shifted, became almost defensive. No, I'm not being shallow. I'm being strategic. This is how you build the life you want. You make smart moves, and staying with someone who's determined to live like a graduate student isn't smart. It's settling. I quietly set down the knife and walked to the bedroom, my mind racing. That morning, I'd spent 2 hours at a jewelry store in Bellevue, working with a designer to create a custom engagement ring. 3-carat diamond, platinum band, the whole thing. I'd been planning to propose on our 3-year anniversary next month, had the restaurant picked out, the speech half written in my notes app. And the entire time, Elena had been counting down the days until she could trade me in for someone who looked better on her arm. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I smiled when she came back inside, served dinner, made small talk about her day at the firm. She had no idea I'd heard everything, and I wanted to keep it that way because something had clicked in my mind. If she'd been performing our entire relationship, treating it like a strategic move, then I needed to know the full truth before I made any decisions. The next few weeks were strange. I acted completely normal around Elena, while quietly paying attention to things I'd previously overlooked. She was working late more often, sometimes not answering texts for hours. Weekend depositions and emergency client meetings seemed to pop up constantly. She'd come home exhausted, barely wanting to talk, and I had accepted her explanations without question. Now I started noticing patterns. My business partner, Jason, pulled me aside one afternoon at the office. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Man, I don't know if I should say something, but I saw Elena yesterday at that Italian place in Pioneer Square. She was with some guy, and it looked pretty intimate. They were holding hands across the table. I kept my expression neutral. What'd the guy look like? Older, maybe late 40s, expensive suit, silver hair. They seemed really familiar with each other, like it wasn't their first time meeting up. Thanks for telling me, I said. I appreciate it. Jason hesitated. You okay, man? You want me to dig into this? I'm good, but yeah, if you happen to see anything else, let me know. That night, I did what any self-respecting tech founder would do. I went full investigator mode. Elena and I shared a phone plan because she'd asked to be added to mine a year ago to save money. Ironic, considering how much she seemed to care about appearances of wealth. I pulled up the account online and started looking at patterns. Her call logs showed repeated calls to one number, dozens of them over the past 6 months. Late-night calls, weekend calls, calls that lasted 30, 40 minutes. I reverse-searched the number. Dylan Pierce, managing partner at Morrison & Pierce, Elena's firm. I pulled up the firm's website and found his profile. Distinguished-looking, silver-haired, exactly matching Jason's description. Married with 2 teenage kids, according to his bio. My stomach turned, but I kept digging. I checked Elena's calendar, the one she'd shared with me for coordinating schedules. Every weekend deposition or emergency meeting lined up perfectly with gaps in Dylan's public schedule. When she'd gone to that legal conference in Portland last month, Dylan's LinkedIn showed he'd been at the same event. I pulled up our shared credit card statement, the one where I'd added her as an authorized user. Hotel charges in Portland, dinners at expensive restaurants, a weekend trip to Napa I'd known nothing about, all charged to my card while she was supposedly working. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed more. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before I decided how to handle it. That's when Monica reached out. Monica Reyes was a paralegal at Elena's firm. I'd met her a few times at company events, and she'd always seemed kind and genuine. She sent me a message on LinkedIn late one Thursday night. "Marcus, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet for coffee? It's about Elena, and you deserve to know the truth." My hands were surprisingly steady as I typed back. "Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. at the Starbucks on 4th Avenue.
Monica showed up looking nervous, clutching her coffee cup with both hands. She sat down across from me and didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I've been debating whether to reach out for weeks," she started. "But after seeing what's been happening, I can't stay quiet anymore. Elena and Dylan have been having an affair for 8 months. I nodded slowly. I suspected, but I needed confirmation. Monica looked relieved that she didn't have to convince me. It's not even subtle at the office. They disappear together, take extended lunch breaks, book the same hotels for out-of-town meetings. Everyone knows, but nobody says anything because Dylan's a managing partner. He controls who makes partner, who gets the best cases, everything." She pulled out her tablet and opened her email. "I've been forwarding myself copies of things because Dylan's wife, Sarah, is actually a friend of mine from college. She has no idea what's happening, and it's killing me watching her trust him while he does this. These are emails between Dylan and Elena discussing their relationship, meeting times, hotel bookings, even conversations about their future together." I scrolled through the evidence. It was damning. Messages where Dylan promised to help Elena make partner, emails where Elena discussed ending things with me after the partnership announcement, calendar invites disguised as client meetings that were actually their meetups, credit card receipts from my own card being used for their hotel rooms. "There's more," Monica continued. "Elena's been telling people at the firm that you're temporary, that she's waiting for the right time to upgrade. She's even shown people photos of houses she wants to buy with Dylan once he leaves his wife. They're planning a whole life together, and neither of you nor Sarah are part of that picture." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "What do you get out of it?" Monica's eyes hardened. "Because I'm tired of watching good people get destroyed by selfish ones. Sarah doesn't deserve this. You don't deserve this. And honestly, Elena and Dylan don't deserve to get away with it. They've been using firm resources for their affair, billing clients for time they spent together, violating ethics rules left and right. Someone needs to hold them accountable." She forwarded everything to my personal email. Hotel receipts, email screenshots, calendar evidence, even some photos that other staff members had taken of them at firm events, standing too close, touching too familiarly. "There's one more thing," Monica said as she stood to leave. "Elena's partnership ceremony is in 6 weeks. Big black tie event, all the clients, press, major donors to the firm. She's been planning it for months, already bought a dress that cost more than my monthly rent. Dylan's going to be presenting her partnership announcement personally. She thinks it's going to be the best night of her life." I looked up at Monica, and something in my expression must have conveyed my thoughts, because she smiled slightly. "If you're planning what I think you're planning, I want to help. What Dylan and Elena have done doesn't just hurt you and Sarah, it hurts the integrity of the entire firm." Over the next month, I didn't confront Elena once. I acted like the supportive boyfriend she expected me to be. When she talked about the upcoming partnership ceremony, I asked questions, showed interest. When she mentioned needing a date for the event, I volunteered immediately. She seemed surprised and pleased. "Really? You'd want to come? It's going to be formal, lots of important people." "Of course," I said, pulling her close. "This is a huge moment for you. I want to be there to celebrate." She kissed me, and I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved was a stranger wearing a familiar face, but I smiled and played my part because I had plans of my own forming. Behind the scenes, I was orchestrating something much bigger. I contacted Sarah Pierce through Monica. We met at a coffee shop in Tacoma, far from anywhere we might be recognized. Sarah was an elegant woman in her mid-40s, with kind eyes that looked tired and sad. She already suspected something was wrong, she admitted. Dylan had been distant, working late constantly, hiding his phone, but she'd trusted him, believed his explanations about work stress in big cases. I showed her everything. The evidence Monica had provided, my own findings, the timeline I'd constructed. Sarah cried quietly. Then her expression shifted to something harder. "He promised me," she whispered. "When we got married, when we had our kids, he promised he'd never be like his father. His dad cheated on his mom throughout their marriage. Dylan saw what it did to her, and he swore he'd never do that to me." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Sarah wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "What are you planning to do with all this?" I explained my idea, the partnership ceremony, the public nature of it, the fact that both Elena and Dylan would be there celebrating, thinking they'd gotten away with everything. Sarah listened, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm in, but I want to add something. The firm's ethics committee, they need to know that Dylan's been billing client hours for personal time with Elena. That's grounds for disbarment, not just termination." We spent the next 3 weeks building our case. Sarah hired a private investigator who documented Dylan and Elena meeting at hotels, restaurants, even taking a weekend trip to Victoria together, while Dylan had told Sarah he was at a legal conference in San Francisco. I worked with Monica to gather email evidence, calendar proof, billing records that showed discrepancies between what Dylan claimed to be doing and where he actually was. Sarah contacted the firm's ethics committee anonymously, filing a formal complaint with enough information to make them start asking questions. She also quietly contacted several major clients of the firm, letting them know she had concerns about billing irregularities on their accounts, planted seeds that would bloom at exactly the right time. Elena had no idea any of this was happening. She was too focused on her partnership ceremony, on picking the perfect dress, on crafting her acceptance speech. She'd even started being slightly nicer to me, like she'd decided to squeeze a bit more use out of our relationship before discarding me. She asked me to buy a new suit for the event. "Can't have you showing up in something off the rack," she'd said with a laugh. "This is important." I bought a custom Tom Ford suit, spent more on it than I'd ever spent on clothing in my life. When I showed up for the final fitting, the tailor whistled. "Someone's celebrating something big." "Something like that," I agreed. The night of the partnership ceremony arrived on a crisp Friday evening in September. The event was being held at the Fremont Olympic Hotel, one of Seattle's most prestigious venues. I picked Elena up from her apartment, and she looked stunning in a black designer gown that probably cost $5,000. She smiled when she saw me in my suit. "Look at you, all cleaned up. You look almost like you belong at one of these things." I smiled back and opened the car door for her. Even drove my Camry, which she barely tried to hide her embarrassment about. "Can't believe I'm showing up to my partnership ceremony in a Toyota," she muttered as we pulled up to valet. "At least it's reliable," I said cheerfully, tossing the keys to the attendant. The ballroom was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers, round tables covered in white linens, centerpieces that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. 200 people mingled, holding champagne glasses, networking, celebrating. Partners from the firm, major clients, representatives from corporate legal departments, even a few local journalists covering the event for legal industry publications. Elena immediately went into performance mode, introducing me to people with the bare minimum of detail. "This is Marcus, my boyfriend. He works in tech." Then she'd quickly pivot the conversation to herself, her cases, her achievements. I smiled and played along, shaking hands, making small talk, watching Dylan Pierce work the room with his wife Sarah on his arm. Sarah caught my eye across the ballroom. She looked composed, elegant, playing the role of supportive wife perfectly. Nobody would have guessed what we had planned. Dinner was served at 7. Speeches began at 8. The managing partners talked about the firm's successful year, about the tradition of excellence, about the newest members joining partnership. Elena sat at our table practically vibrating with excitement.
Dylan was seated at the head table with other senior partners, occasionally glancing over at Elena with a look that made my skin crawl. Then came the moment. Dylan stood to make his announcement. Tonight, we have the pleasure of welcoming 3 exceptional attorneys into our partnership. These individuals have demonstrated not only legal excellence, but also dedication to our clients and our firm's values. He went through the first 2 names, and each new partner walked to the stage to receive their partnership certificate and give a brief speech. Then, Dylan's voice took on a warmer tone. And finally, I have the distinct pleasure of announcing someone who has been an invaluable asset to our corporate law division. Her work on the Techmark acquisition and the Sullivan merger has been nothing short of exceptional. Please join me in welcoming our newest partner, Elena Rodriguez. The room erupted in applause. Elena stood, smoothing her dress, and walked toward the stage with her head held high. She climbed the steps, shook Dylan's hand with just the right amount of professional distance, and accepted her certificate. She stepped to the microphone to give her acceptance speech, and I could see tears of joy in her eyes. "This is such an incredible honor," she began. "Morrison & Pierce has been my professional home for 7 years, and making partner here has been my dream since my first day as a summer associate." That's when I stood up from my table. Sarah stood up simultaneously from hers. We'd timed it perfectly. Monica, positioned near the AV booth, gave a subtle nod to the technician she'd convinced to help us. The large screens throughout the ballroom, currently displaying the firm's logo, suddenly changed. Elena's voice faltered mid-sentence as she noticed people's attention shifting to the screens. The first image appeared. A photo of Elena and Dylan at a restaurant in Portland, holding hands across the table. Taken during the legal conference she'd told me was all business. The timestamp showed the date and time. The next slide showed text messages, screenshots of conversations between Elena and Dylan discussing their relationship, making plans to meet, talking about their future together. Then came the hotel receipts, dozens of them, all charged to my credit card with Elena as the authorized user. Dates that corresponded with her claimed work trips and emergency depositions. The ballroom fell completely silent, except for the sound of Elena's microphone picking up her sharp intake of breath. Dylan stood frozen at the edge of the stage, his face draining of color. The presentation continued. Billing records showing hours Dylan had claimed to be working on client cases while actually being at hotels with Elena. Calendar evidence demonstrating the pattern of their affair over 8 months. Then came the email screenshots, conversations where they discussed waiting until after Elena made partner to go public with their relationship. Messages where Elena called me a placeholder and discussed dumping me once the partnership was secured. One particular message filled the screen. Elena to Dylan. "Can't wait until this stupid ceremony is over. Once I have the partnership title, I'm done playing house with Marcus. 3 years of tolerating his mediocre lifestyle will finally pay off. Just need him to get me through this event so I don't show up alone. Then I'm all yours." I watched Elena's face transform from confusion to horror to absolute devastation. She turned to look at Dylan, who was now trying to push his way through the crowd toward the AV booth, but Sarah stepped directly into his path.
"Going somewhere?" she asked, her voice carrying in the silent room. She raised her hand, showing the crowd her phone. "I've already forwarded everything to the Ethics Committee, the Bar Association, and your divorce attorney. Yes, I filed for divorce this afternoon. The papers are waiting for you at home." Dylan opened his mouth, but no words came out. One of the senior partners, Margaret Blackwell, stood from her table. Her face was a mask of fury. "Both of you," she said, pointing at Dylan and Elena. "In the conference room, now." But the presentation wasn't done. The final slides appeared, showing a timeline. Every instance where Dylan and Elena had used firm resources for their personal affair. Every client meeting that had been faked. Every business trip that had been a romantic getaway on client dime. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. And then the last slide, simple text on a black background. "To Elena Rodriguez, You said Marcus Williams was beneath your level. You were right. I was beneath your level because I valued honesty, integrity, and loyalty, things you clearly never understood. Enjoy your partnership while it lasts. To Dylan Pierce, your wife and your reputation deserved better. To Morrison and Pierce, you might want to review your ethics policies. This has been going on under your nose for 8 months. The screens went back to the firm logo. The room erupted in chaos. Journalists were frantically typing on their phones. Clients were demanding explanations. Senior partners were surrounding Margaret Blackwell, speaking in urgent tones. Elena stood frozen on stage, still holding her partnership certificate, tears streaming down her face. I walked out of the ballroom with Sarah beside me. Behind us, we could hear Elena calling my name, her voice breaking with desperation. We didn't look back. Outside, Sarah turned to me. "Thank you for having the courage to expose this. I know it wasn't easy." "Thank you for helping," I replied. "You didn't have to go through with it." She smiled sadly. "Yes, I did. For my kids, they need to see that their mother won't tolerate being treated like she doesn't matter. And they need to know that their father's actions have consequences." We stood there for a moment, two people who'd been betrayed finding strength in solidarity. Then Sarah's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression shifted to something almost like satisfaction. The ethics committee just suspended Dylan pending investigation. 3 major clients have already pulled their business, and Margaret is recommending immediate termination for both of them. "Good," I said simply. The fallout happened fast and brutal. By Monday morning, both Elena and Dylan were terminated from Morrison and Pierce. The official statement cited ethics violations, misuse of firm resources, and conduct unbecoming of partnership. The Bar Association opened formal investigations into both of their licenses. Elena tried calling me hundreds of times over the next few days. I blocked her number. She showed up at my office. Security escorted her out. She sent letters to my apartment, long, rambling apologies mixed with justifications and pleas for another chance. I forwarded them to my attorney without reading past the first paragraph. What I didn't expect was the public response. Someone at the ceremony had recorded the entire presentation on their phone, and it went viral. Within days, it had millions of views across social media platforms. People debated whether I'd gone too far, whether public humiliation was justified, whether Elena and Dylan deserved what happened to them. The legal community in Seattle mostly sided with me and Sarah. Other firms came forward with stories about Dylan's pattern of inappropriate behavior with younger attorneys. Clients who'd worked with Elena revealed that she'd padded bills and blamed it on junior associates. The more that came out, the worse it looked for both of them. 3 weeks after the ceremony, I got a letter from Elena. It was different from the others. No apologies, no excuses. Just a simple acknowledgement. "You were right," she wrote. "I chose image over substance, status over character. I thought I was being strategic, but I was just being cruel. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost. You deserved better than how I treated you, and I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to see that." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd feel something reading it, but that day wasn't today.
Sarah and I stayed in touch. She was navigating her divorce with grace and determination. Dylan tried fighting it, claiming she was being vindictive, but the evidence was overwhelming. She ended up with primary custody of their kids and most of their assets. Last I heard, Dylan was working at a small firm in Spokane, his reputation in Seattle permanently destroyed. As for Elena, she moved to Portland and took a contract position at a mid-sized firm. No partnership track, no prestige, just basic legal work to pay her bills. Her social media presence, once carefully curated to showcase her fabulous life, went dark. I heard through mutual connections that she'd cut ties with Victoria, Sienna, and Gabrielle. Apparently, when you're no longer useful for their social climbing, those friendships evaporate quickly. Monica, the paralegal who'd helped expose everything, got promoted to a senior position at Morrison & Pierce. The new managing partner, Margaret Blackwell, made it clear that integrity mattered more than anything else at the firm. 6 months after everything went down, my company got acquired. A major tech corporation bought us for $50 million. The news hit the business section of the Seattle Times, complete with my photo and details about the acquisition. I got a text from Jason, my business partner, about an hour after the article published. "Elena just called me asking for your number. Told her to lose mine." I smiled and deleted the message. That same week, I met someone new. Her name was Rachel Chen, and she was a software engineer who'd recently moved to Seattle from Austin. Sarah, of all people, introduced us. "Rachel's my cousin," Sarah explained over coffee. "She's brilliant, kind, and has no patience for shallow people. I think you two would get along." She was right. Rachel and I went on our first date to a casual Thai restaurant in Ballard. She drove up in a Honda CR-V and laughed when she saw my Camry. "Practical car choice," she said approvingly. "Spending money on cars is overrated when you could be investing it instead." We talked for 4 hours about everything from artificial intelligence to our favorite hiking trails to our shared philosophy about building wealth quietly. When I dropped her off at her apartment, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "I had a really good time. You're exactly what you appear to be, and that's refreshing." 3 months later, we're still together. Rachel knows everything about what happened with Elena. She's seen the viral video, read the articles, heard the whole story. Her response was simple. Anyone who couldn't see your value doesn't deserve to be in your life. Their loss is my gain. I finally moved out of my modest condo. Not because anyone pressured me to, but because I realized I'd been so focused on not appearing materialistic that I'd denied myself things I actually wanted. I bought a house in Magnolia with a view of Puget Sound. Still practical, still comfortable, but more space for the life I'm building. And yeah, I kept the Camry. It runs perfectly fine, and Rachel thinks it's charming. Looking back on everything, I realized that night at the partnership ceremony wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Elena and Dylan had built their relationship on lies, manipulation, and the exploitation of people who trusted them. All I did was bring those lies into the light and let the consequences unfold naturally. People sometimes ask if I regret how I handled it, if I think the public exposure was too harsh. My answer is always the same. Elena humiliated me first, repeatedly, over years. She just didn't expect that the man she'd underestimated would have the evidence and the spine to respond. She made choices. I simply made sure those choices had appropriate consequences. The truth is, I'm grateful for how everything turned out. If Elena hadn't revealed who she really was, I might have married her, spent years building a life with someone who saw me as a temporary inconvenience rather than a partner. That phone conversation I overheard, as painful as it was, saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. I'm not beneath anyone's level. I never was. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, living on my own terms, surrounded by people who value substance over appearance. Elena taught me an important lesson, just not the one she intended. She taught me that some people will always prioritize image over reality, performance over authenticity, and status over character. And those people aren't worth keeping in your life, no matter how beautiful they are or how much you think you love them. Sarah texted me last week with an update. Dylan's struggling in Spokane. Elena's apparently dating someone new in Portland, and both of them are facing ongoing ethics investigations that could result in license suspensions. Meanwhile, Sarah's thriving in her career as an interior designer. Her kids are doing well despite the divorce, and she's even started dating someone who treats her with respect. As for me, I'm building a new company with Jason. We're developing cybersecurity software for small businesses. Rachel's been consulting on the project, contributing her expertise. We are taking it slow, building something sustainable rather than chasing quick success. And every day, I'm reminded that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building a better life without the people who couldn't see your value in the first place. The other day, I was having dinner with Rachel at a restaurant in downtown Seattle. As we were leaving, I saw Elena across the street. She was alone, walking with her head down, looking nothing like the polished woman who'd once turned heads in every room. She didn't see me, and I didn't try to get her attention. There was nothing left to say.
Rachel noticed my expression and squeezed my hand. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, meaning it. "I'm better than okay. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." And that's the truth. Sometimes people come into your life to teach you what you don't want, to show you what real love isn't, to demonstrate that your worth isn't determined by how others perceive you. Elena was that lesson for me. A painful, expensive, publicly humiliating lesson, but a lesson nonetheless. I hope she's learned something too. I hope she's figured out that partnerships built on lies always collapse, that underestimating people is dangerous, and that treating others as disposable will eventually leave you alone. But whether she has or hasn't isn't my concern anymore. She's part of my past, a chapter that taught me important things about myself and what I deserve. The best part of this whole experience wasn't the viral video or the justice of watching Elena and Dylan face consequences. It was discovering my own strength. For years, I'd let Elena's comments and her friends' mockery slide, telling myself it didn't matter, that I was secure enough in who I was that their opinions couldn't touch me. But there's a difference between being secure and being a doormat. I'd crossed that line without realizing it, accepting treatment I should have rejected from the start. That night at the ceremony, walking out of that ballroom, I reclaimed something I'd been slowly giving away. My dignity, my self-respect, my understanding that I deserve to be with someone who celebrates me rather than tolerates me. And that reclamation was worth every awkward moment, every viral comment, every article written about the situation. If you're reading this or watching this, and you're in a relationship where you feel constantly judged, constantly measured against someone else's arbitrary standards, constantly made to feel like you're not enough, I want you to hear this clearly. You are enough. You've always been enough. And anyone who makes you feel otherwise is revealing their own insecurities, not your inadequacies. Walking away is hard. Exposing the truth is harder. But staying in a relationship that diminishes you is hardest of all. It slowly erodes your sense of self until you barely recognize who you've become. Don't let anyone do that to you. Not for love, not for comfort, not for fear of being alone. I'd rather be alone and authentic than partnered and performing. And now with Rachel, I've learned that I don't have to choose. I can be myself completely and still be loved, valued, cherished. That's what real partnership looks like. Not one person tolerating another until something better comes along, but two people choosing each other every day because they genuinely enhance each other's lives. Elena once said I was below her level. She was right, just not in the way she meant. I was below the level of superficiality, status obsession, and shallow values that defined her world, and I'm grateful for that every single day. So here's to everyone who's ever been underestimated, to everyone who's been judged by their car, their clothes, their modest lifestyle choices, to everyone who's been called boring for being stable or mediocre for being content. You're not below anyone's level. You're simply operating on a different value system, one that prioritizes substance over flash, character over image, authenticity over performance. And to anyone who's ever been betrayed, humiliated, or discarded by someone they loved, I want you to know that it gets better. The pain fades, the anger transforms into wisdom, and eventually you look back and realize that the ending of that relationship wasn't a loss, it was a liberation. 3 years with Elena taught me what I don't want. 6 months with Rachel has shown me what's possible when you're with someone who sees your value from the start. That's not to say Rachel is perfect or that our relationship is without challenges, but the foundation is completely different. It's built on mutual respect, honest communication, and a shared understanding that we're partners, not one person managing another person's image. The viral video from that partnership ceremony still gets shared occasionally. People still debate whether I was justified or vindictive. I've stopped reading comments or engaging with the discussion. What happened that night wasn't for public consumption or validation. It was for me, for Sarah, and for every person who's ever been treated as less than they deserved by someone who claimed to love them. Monica told me recently that Morrison and Pierce have completely overhauled their ethics policies. They've implemented stricter oversight of partner relationships, clearer boundaries around workplace conduct, and more robust reporting systems for inappropriate behavior. Dylan and Elena's scandal forced the firm to reckon with cultural problems that had existed for years. Sometimes it takes public embarrassment to create real change. I still drive my Camry sometimes, though I also bought myself a Tesla because I wanted one, not because anyone expected it. I still wear jeans and hoodies most days. I still live relatively modestly compared to what I could afford. But now those choices come from genuine preference rather than fear of appearing materialistic. There's freedom in that distinction.
Rachel and I are talking about moving in together. She wants to keep her apartment for a while as a home office, and I'm fine with that. We're building something at our own pace, without pressure or performance. Her family loves me, my friends adore her, and most importantly, when we're together, I feel like the best version of myself, rather than a project that needs improvement. The other day, I was giving a talk at a tech conference in San Francisco. During the Q&A, someone asked how I maintained humility despite my success. I thought about Elena, about how desperately she'd chased external validation, about how it had ultimately destroyed her career and relationships. I don't think humility is something you maintain, I answered. It's something you choose. Every day you decide whether you're going to let success change your values or reinforce them, whether you're going to judge people by what they've achieved or who they are, whether you're going to prioritize appearance or substance. Those choices define you far more than your bank account ever will. After my talk, a young woman approached me. She looked nervous but determined. "I just wanted to thank you," she said. "I saw what happened with your ex-girlfriend, and it gave me courage to leave my own toxic relationship. My boyfriend was constantly making me feel worthless, and I thought that was normal. Seeing you stand up for yourself reminded me that I deserved better." That conversation meant more to me than any of the viral views or media coverage. If my experience helped even one person recognize their own worth and walk away from someone who diminished them, then every uncomfortable moment was worthwhile. So where am I now, 4 months after everything exploded? I'm happy. Genuinely, thoroughly happy in a way I never was with Elena. I wake up each morning grateful for the life I'm building, the people in it, and the lessons I've learned along the way. The acquisition money is being invested wisely. My new company is growing steadily. Rachel and I are planning a trip to Japan next month, something I've wanted to do for years but never prioritized. And Elena? I heard she's in therapy, working through why she made the choices she did. Part of me hopes she finds peace and learns from her mistakes, not for my sake, but for hers, and for whoever she dates next. Everyone deserves the chance to grow and change. Whether she takes that chance isn't my concern anymore. The ring I'd bought for her, the 3-carat Tiffany diamond she never got to see, I returned it the week after the ceremony. Got a full refund, donated half of it to a women's business scholarship fund in Sarah's name, and invested the rest. That ring represented a future built on false foundations. Returning it felt like closing a chapter and opening a new one. If there's one thing I want people to take away from this story, it's this. Never let anyone convince you that you're not enough. Not your partner, not their friends, not society's arbitrary standards of success. You define your own worth. You decide what matters to you, and you choose who gets to be part of your life based on how they treat you, not on how good they look next to you. Elena wanted someone who matched her image of success. Dylan wanted someone young and ambitious he could manipulate. They found each other, built a relationship on lies and status, and it collapsed spectacularly when the truth came out. That's what happens when you prioritize appearance over authenticity. Eventually, the performance becomes unsustainable, and reality crashes through. Meanwhile, I'm building a life based on genuine values, real connections, and honest self-expression. It's not perfect, it's not always Instagram-worthy, but it's mine, and it's real, and that makes it infinitely more valuable than anything Elena and I had together. The best revenge isn't destruction or humiliation, though I won't pretend those weren't satisfying in the moment. The best revenge is living well. It's waking up each day and choosing happiness. It's surrounding yourself with people who celebrate you rather than tolerate you. It's building a life so fulfilling that your past pain becomes just a chapter in a much larger story of growth and resilience. I'm not the same person I was when I overheard that phone call. I'm stronger, wiser, more protective of my own boundaries. I know what I deserve now. I know what real partnership looks like. And I know that being underestimated by the wrong person is actually a gift because it frees you to find the right ones. To everyone watching this who's ever felt below someone else's level, remember this. Levels are just constructs created by insecure people to make themselves feel superior. Real connection, real love, real partnership happens when two people meet as equals, respecting and valuing each other for who they actually are rather than what they represent. Elena taught me what I don't want. Rachel is showing me what's possible, and I'm grateful for both lessons, even though one was far more painful than the other. Growth often comes through discomfort. Wisdom often emerges from the trail, and sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best outcomes. If you found value in this story, hit that subscribe button and become part of our community. Drop a comment about a time you stood up for yourself or walked away from someone who didn't value you. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're enough exactly as they are. And remember that your worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion. It's inherent, unchangeable, and absolute. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Don't wait for the public humiliation or the discovered affair or the overheard conversation. Trust your instincts, value yourself, and never settle for being someone's placeholder while they search for something better. You're not below anyone's level. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, and the right people will see that from the very beginning.